What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the second album by new metal band Head PE. Basically, this project is called Broke, and it came out in the summer of the year 2000. Now, the thing about this particular album is just the fact that it has two of their biggest hits on here. This is their most commercial album as far as that kind of happens. Bartender and Killing Time were some songs that charted pretty heavily on the rock charts as far as that kind of went and stuff. And this is just an interesting album just because I wanted to see what it was about. And as far as that kind of went, this is basically like pretty similar to Limp Bizkit, definitely the same type vibes as Limp Bizkit as far as that kind of happens. Definitely in that same sort of pitch. It's some new metal back when it was at its pitch popularity as far as that kind of happens. The year 2000 was a huge year for new metal as far as that kind of went. There were a bunch of new metal clones and Limp Bizkit clones, but particularly this is pretty good just because it has some of those pitches. If you definitely enjoyed like the album Significant Other by Limp Bizkit, I would definitely recommend this one because this is kind of amongst that particular era. Chocolate Starfish hadn't quite come out yet in the year 2000 by the time this album came out, so it's kind of the concept that this is more similar to Significant Other. Definitely songs like Break Stuff and Nookie and some of those type ones, maybe with a little bit of like rearranged in there, some of those type ones. I'd have to say it was just a good concept to kind of get it because they actually pull off this vibe pretty well. I like the concept of seeing this Jared cat's pretty dope as far as that kind of happens. It's a good concept to kind of have. And this is actually a pretty well-rounded album, I'd have to say. It's not going to get like a classic kind of rave score, but it's definitely in like the neighboring community of it as far as like the quality that kind of happens here. It's just some good stuff that overall happens. It's definitely a pretty grade A new metal album, I'd have to say. When when folks kind of say like new metal is typically kind of a subgenre that catches a lot of flack as far as that kind of happens in terms of quality as far as that kind of goes, but this is definitely a pretty highlighted one. Has a lot of good stuff on here as far as that kind of goes. There's definitely some good praise things to kind of talk about, and despite the fact that Head PE is almost seen like a one-hit wonder or two-hit wonder just based upon the stuff, they kind of only had like really two hit albums that had a couple of charting singles on there. They're an offshoot of like Cottonmouth Kings, not necessarily an offshoot, but just they were on Cottonmouth Kings' label. I think I want to say that Head PE might have been on Cottonmouth Kings' Suburban Noise sub label as far as that kind of happens. It's an interesting concept as far as that kind of goes, but there's definitely some good stuff. It's a lot more low key for new metal. It's not quite as large as like Godsmack or Linkin Park or Limp Bizkit or some of those type ones, or like other ones like that, Corn and some of the big name ones, but it's definitely in the neighboring community. I would say this is pretty much like a secondary kind of band. They definitely have a lot of good things going for them as far as that kind of happens. This would have to say some good stuff. So yeah, there's three singles here. These three singles charted pretty modestly, I'd have to say. So the first single is Bartender. Definitely like this song. This is kind of a dreary kind of bar music tune with like a Limp Bizkit like chorus, I'd have to say. It's a good day after hours hit, definitely. And it's just some good unwind music. So I definitely like the concept of this particular one. It's pretty similar to like Take a Look Around and a little bit of Nookie in there by Limp Bizkit as far as that kind of happens. Just a nice one to kind of unwind at a bar and that type of stuff. Just flirt with some bartenders, some of that type of stuff as far as that kind of happens. Just some good kind of tunes for like the summer haze as far as that kind of goes. Great tune for like July, August, just in like the scorching type heat, just some simmering type weather as far as that kind of happens, just languishing and kind of kicking back in like a bar or something like that. Great little new metal tune as far as that kind of goes. Definite good hit. Definitely reminds me of Limp Bizkit in the chorus, I'd have to say. And then the second single is Killing Time. This is another kind of dusky one, I'd have to say. This is a dusky kind of evening blaze. Killing Time is like a dusky kind of evening malaise. I'd have to say it's a solid kind of unwind and kickback tune. I'd have to say, and it's great for like a 4:20 p.m. smoke session. I'd have to say, and it's definitely great for a 4:20 smoke session and congregating as far as I can have. So these are some social ones, but the thing about these songs is they're so lackadaisical and just malaise about it. These are just most of this album's pretty good for some unwinding and just kind of kickback. Just great. Most of this album's just great for like 3:30, 4:30 p.m. It's like the tasks are done and you're starting to unwind as far as that kind of happens. It's some real R&R and type kickback for just getting ready to smoke a stogie, something like that, go out and get crunk at a club, something like that. As far as that kind of happens, I'd have to say some good stuff there. But the third single didn't chart, but it's a pretty nice one. Also, this song is called The Meadow, Special Like You. So this is the definite nice one. This is kind of a dusky late day haze for like reprieve and relaxation. I'd have to say it's a good comfy smoke session, definitely. It's just a song for the tasks being done and that type of stuff, I'd have to say. So it's definitely one. It's kind of like an acoustic type song, something that you'd expect like Offspring or one of those type folks, or Third Eye Blind, some of those type folks. Just kind of summery type haze that just is kind of in between like alternative rock, something Foo Fighters or like Third Eye Blind would have done back in 97, 98. This real pop ready, this really kind of pop ready, pop rock type tune as far as something like that kind of happens. Just the Smash Mouth and kind of Sugar Ray type stuff and like Third Eye Blind, some of those type folks. This really works as that kind of sense. There's some light acoustic. This kind of has some light acoustic guitar licks. I'm actually surprised that this song didn't chart better. It's really too bad because this is a pretty offhanded, just bewildering kind of third single that just has a lot of highlight to it that just works pretty well. That just works pretty well as far as that kind of happens. So it's a good after hours kind of tune, just great song to wind down to and kind of smoke a stogie, something like that. Just some good stuff. So yeah, that's basically the concept about it. Three kind of bewildering kind of singles just for evening hour haze. I just would have to say that most of this album has a pretty good affluence about it. Maybe it doesn't quite reach like the sheer energy of Limp Bizkit, but it does definitely have some good moments. Like it's typical of a new metal album to kind of have some of these craze type moments, but for the most part, this is just kind of more bubbling energy, more so than boiling energy. But I would have to say it's still quality despite all that. So it's definitely kind of the concept. So out of the songs I recommend, there's 12 songs on this particular album. There's 12 songs on this particular album, and out of those 12, I wound up recommending to you 8 plus 1 almost songs. That's kind of the concept about it. So I'll go ahead and recommend these songs. So the 8 songs would be Bartender, Killing Time, The Meadow, I Got You, Boom, How You Like That, Waiting to Die, Crazy Legs, and Swan Dive. And the almost song is Feel Good. So talk about Feel Good. This is a nice one just because this has Serge Tankian on there from System of a Down and Morgan Lander, who I don't know who that is, but just looking after the concept. Basically, Feel Good is kind of a tasks done, kind of time to get crunk kind of vibes that this song particularly kind of has. It's some evening excitement, I'd have to say, and it's a good Kickstarter, and it's like some bubbling new metal, I'd have to say. So this is another one kind of similar to like the singles, Killing Time and Bartender, some of those type ones. Just some real Feel Good is just some real good brewing type energy as far as getting ready to step out, just some stuff like that, just some good bubbling type stuff to kind of have just amongst like the tasks of getting ready to get done and just that sort of stuff as far as like the revving kind of energy of just getting ready to get crunk a little bit as far as that kind of goes. Those are some nice ones. But then there are some other ones on here. Like I feel like I Got You is another highlight. This one's definitely kind of a this one's a little bit more murky, but I definitely like the production on this one. This is a real nice new metal beat, I'd have to say. This is kind of a murky late evening highlight, I'd have to say, to get crunk. Definitely, it's a new metal blazer, I'd have to say. And it's just a glaring kind of, this song is just some glaring summer fun. And it's a pretty overall lit song, I'd have to say. So it's just a nice one. Once again, one of the best beats on the album, definitely. This one's not quite as rock heavy, but it just has like that murky kind of haze about it as far as that kind of happens. And then Boom, How You Like That. It's kind of some jarring, kind of jittery new metal, I'd have to say. It's kind of similar to Insane in the Brain by Cypress Hill, I definitely would have to suppose. And it's just kind of a schizophrenic and kind of jivey type tune, definitely. So this is one's a little bit more jarring, a little bit more litty as far as that kind of happens. It's definitely a little bit more contemporary as far as that kind of goes, but it's just kind of the schizophrenicness as far as that kind of happens. It's just kind of some jittery times that just work pretty damn well. So I'd have to say definitely pretty similar to like 90s kind of like punk rock as far as that kind of happens, new metal type stuff, to something you expect out of Cypress Hill or House of Pain or some of those type ones. Some of those type folks from like the early 90s as far as that kind of happens. Just some good new metal in that original form as far as that kind of happens. Just a real jittery type one. Waiting to Die is definitely a pretty hype one. This is definitely like a gnarled kind of boiling night venue rager, I'd have to say. Definite good hype energy to kind of have, I'd have to say, to cut loose. And it's just an easy kind of dance hit. So this is one that's pretty, this is one of the more manic. Waiting to Die is one of the more rave songs on this particular album. Definitely one of the most hype ones and one of the more party starting, kick starting ones to kind of have as far as it kind of happens. Definitely has some manic and kind of outrageous kind of energy as far as it kind of happens. Definite nice one. And then Crazy Legs is another nice one for that sort of stuff. This one's kind of a revved up kind of evening gem, I'd have to say. It's kind of riveting, but it's also kind of steady as far as that kind of happens. It's just a good house party, but kind of hang out at the same time kind of cut. Yeah, Crazy Legs should definitely take you back to early 2000s kind of new metal as far as that kind of happens. Just a definite kind of hype one, very similar to like the Offspring and some folks like that, Limp Bizkit, some of those type folks from like the early 2000s as far as that kind of happens. Just a definite nice one, just real good pitch there. And then Swan Dive is another nice one. Definitely recommend this one. This is a summery kind of reggaeton like jam, I'd have to say, similar to Nookie by Limp Bizkit. That's another song on here that's pretty similar to Nookie. Definitely like the concept of that. It's the same type craze and effectualness that that song particularly kind of has, and it's just pretty hype. Basically, if you're looking for a song like Nookie with a little bit more summer kind of Jamaican and kind of reggaeton type feel, I'd say that Swan Dive is basically one to kind of have. And this is one of Head PE's more popular songs from their early days, so it's definitely a good concept to kind of get that one. This one kind of has some commercial bite, despite the fact that they only really had like a couple singles that charted, just especially in their early days as far as that kind of have. So that's just kind of the concept about it. With some good stuff there as far as that kind of goes. So me basically recommending 8.5 songs out of 12 on this particular album. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like an 8.25 out of 10. I feel like the Almost song is like a minor detractment, but not much. I just would have to say Feel Good is a good song. It's just kind of the concept of Feel Good is a good song as far as it kind of happens. It's just a song I'm kind of on the fence about as far as it kind of happens. Just was kind of getting used to it a little bit. Just not sure how many times I'd come back to it in terms of like the format of when I'd listen to it in a shuffle as far as that kind of happens. But other than that, this album's pretty sheer. Almost 8.5 or 9 songs out of 12. I'd have to say it gets an 8.25 out of 10. Just kind of because the singles are kind of low key and more modest as far as that kind of happens. And you just look after it. I mean, it has commercial bite, but I just kind of feel like this is kind of off to the wayside new metal as far as that kind of happens. So I think you have to be at least somewhat of a fan of new metal to kind of appreciate some of this. I mean, it has like the casual type feel, but not in the sheer aspect as far as that would kind of go. I mean, it's kind of here and there as far as that kind of happens. You have to know about it a little bit and have a little bit of research towards it and just kind of be able to have a little bit more learning curve as far as that kind of happens. So it gets an 8.25 out of 10. The social score, though, I'm going to go ahead and give like about an 8.25 also, just because I feel like there are some singles on here in terms of that. It definitely has some catchiness as far as that kind of happens. I would definitely have to say it's got some new metal hits that definitely is similar to Limp Bizkit's Significant Other and stuff like that. Just a lot of good this album just has a lot of good evening kind of wind down and unwind type after hours type tunes for like 4 o'clock and 5:30, 6 p.m. type stuff as far as that kind of happens. Getting some drinks in your system, some smokish, some stuff like that, some snacks, some Burger King, some like Popeyes, some stuff like that as far as that kind of happens. It's just kind of the concept about winding down a bit as far as that kind of goes, but some great tunes as far as that kind of happens. So basically to talk about the songs I didn't recommend on here, which is just really 3 songs. I kind of felt like Pock Bell was just kind of an awkward one that didn't really have much point. That one's trying to be like an electronic or just kind of like a belly type beat that just didn't work that well. It's kind of an odd one to kind of have. Just wasn't really vibing with that one that much. And then Stevie and then Jesus of Nazareth were just kind of more kind of sluggish type songs that just didn't really work that well. I mean, some of those were trying to be like some hazy type ones that Third Eye Blind and people like that, like Marcy Playground, those type folks kind of did, but they just didn't pull off that affluence. I kind of feel like they have some of that kind of more low key wind down type pitch, but the evening type pitch just doesn't work when the energy's kind of turned down more. And that kind of happened with Stevie a little bit, where it's kind of more turned down, and then later on in the song it got more turned up. So it just didn't match the energy as far as that kind of went. It was just kind of some off putting ones. Just Stevie and Jesus of Nazareth. Just Stevie and Jesus of Nazareth didn't really carry the energy that well as far as that kind of happened. So basically 8.25s across the board. But basically just 8.25s across the board, 8.25 score, 8.25 social as far as that kind of happens. Just some good stuff here for the most part. Pretty solid new metal album, I'd have to say. In terms of the future, like Head PE has put out albums as recent as 2022, so they do have plenty of stuff as far as that kind of happens. They actually have probably more than 8, 9, or 10 albums, I'd have to say. So I'm going to try to get to a few more of these as far as that kind of happens. We'll see a couple more of their commercial ones to kind of see what's up with them as far as that kind of happens. But this is definitely kind of a gem here, and there is some good stuff. Definitely reminds me of Significant Other and stuff like that. And it's just overall got some good wind down kind of energy.